Hi there, it's Bronwyn. Welcome back to Before Dining. If you're new to this podcast, this is where I use my systems thinking skills to end the blaming and shaming of women by going deep into the root causes of weight regain. Today is the first in a series of 10 episodes where I will be using those systems thinking skills to unravel the food stories and eating systems of 10 women. If I was going to give the series a subtitle, it probably would be The Inner Life of a Dieter. Today I'll be sharing Donna's story. Donna is a woman in her late 40s and is the mother of 2 sons. But before I tell you about her, I want to recap on the difference between a food story and an eating system, so you're clear on what the definitions are and also what to look out for in the rest of the episode. So what is a food story? Well, a food story is the lived history of how you learn about food. It includes things like the rules you grew up with, how much food autonomy you had, what food meant in the household where you grew up. It also looks at how emotion was handled and how food needs were either met, ignored, or controlled. But also what you had to do to take care of your own needs if they weren't being provided. So a food story is not about recipes or nutritional knowledge, it's about context. And it's particularly about the emotional climate around food. It really is about whether food was abundant or scarce, controlled, comforting, celebrated, or maybe even withheld. It's about what you learn to do with hunger, with your fear, with sadness, with boredom, and other emotions. Every woman's food story and eating system is unique because it is shaped by her family, food culture, the childhood conditions, and also the pressures that she lived inside. And most importantly, when you're trying to change your weight, your food story explains where your food choices and eating patterns come from. Now let's talk about what is an eating system. In short, an eating system is what your food story has distilled down to. It's like the working model from that food story that now operates on autopilot. In truth, it's your eating blueprint. But like any system, it has rules, it has predictable activation points, it has feedback loops, emotional drivers, and a very specific purpose. So an eating system and the eating that it produces is not random, it is organised. It responds to pressure, it resets emotion, and it activates under certain conditions. So if you eat to get relief, it's not a personal weakness, it's a system reset. When emotion rises above a certain threshold, a system activates to bring it back down. So it's good to think about the eating system as the present-day structure, but the food story is its origin. Now, a quick word about how these two work together. As I've said, your food story is your eating blueprint, and your eating system is the structure that was built from it. When you change your food intake, like with a diet, without understanding your eating system, you're working at the surface or the symptom level. You are adjusting eating behaviour while the eating system underneath remains intact. That's why weight regain is so predictable. The eating system continues to do the job it was built to do, even if the original conditions no longer exist. If you are going to dismantle that eating system, first you must understand the food story that created it. Not to blame others or shame yourself, and certainly not to relive it, but to understand it so you can identify all the moving parts. Once that system is visible, then it can be dismantled, redesigned, or modified to get different weight results. So let me now come back to Donna's story. As I said, Donna is in her late 40s and the mother of 2 sons. When she was a young child, she was very active and slim, but once she hit about 16 years of age, she started to struggle with her weight. Each pregnancy added weight that she has never been able to lose, and she wears clothing multiple sizes larger than she wants. But like most women, she knows how to lose weight. She's demonstrated this on many occasions. And over the years, she went to Weight Watchers multiple times, went on a ketogenic diet, had home-delivered calorie-controlled meals, but her most radical effort involved living on 400 calories a day for 2 weeks. Yeek. All of these efforts delivered some weight loss, but inevitably, all the weight she lost returned. When Donna looks back at the family food culture she grew up in, she had little access and little agency over food. Her mother was randomly violent when she was intoxicated, leaving Donna to live her young life on high alert. She says the random nature of her mother's violence made it worse because she couldn't control it or predict it, so she had to be prepared for it by constantly being on high alert. There was also a complex relationship between her mother and food. Her mother was always trying to create an impression of happiness and generosity outside the home by making these elaborate homemade cakes and biscuits and giving them away. But Donna was never allowed to have any of them. Inside the house, food was very different. The evening meals were often inedible, and it became a nightly standoff. So these large serves of food that Donna found inedible, in fact, had her gagging. So in that environment, stealing the treats her mother hid became inevitable. Stealing food delivered twin benefits. The soothing sugar brought her anxiety down, and it was also like an act of defiance. There was this quiet rebellion in this cat and mouse game that had developed where her mother hid the treats and Donna found them and ate them. Any pocket money that Donna received was spent on chocolates and lollies. She kept a private stash under her bed, and after the lights were turned out, she would quietly open wrappers and eat enough to bring her fear down so she could get to sleep. Now, as an adult, throughout all of her diets, her level of fear fluctuates along with her weight. When fear is high, her eating of chocolate is high, leading to her weight going even higher. So in one way, you can view chocolate and think about it as the problem and the solution. On a regular basis, she clears out all the junk food stashes, but when her fear gets high, they reappear, almost like an insurance policy. In fact, not having access to enough chocolate can give her another thing to worry about, because if she senses that she might need more but doesn't have it available, that can cause even more fear. Now, if you think back to the beginning of this ep, we said eating systems are a distillation of a food story. So let's step through what going deeper into Donna's food story sounds like. At the first level, Donna could say, "I love chocolate." I'm sure many of you have made that statement. The next level could be, "I'm a chocoholic," another statement that people can recognise and identify with. Still nothing shameful, really, at this stage. The next one would be, "I eat chocolate to calm myself." Maybe not something you'd say too much to too many people. The next one is, "I eat chocolate when I feel fear." And then when we get down to a really deep level, that at that level, she might say, "I ate chocolate to survive in a household where my mother was violent when she was drunk." Looking at those different levels as we've gone down deeper, if you just stayed at that first level, you'll find many women with the same story of gaining weight from eating too much chocolate. But by following the line of thinking deeper, the construction of Donna's eating system has a completely different explanation. That's why I spent half my life talking about every woman's food story is unique to her. And it's obvious that it has to be, because these eating systems come out of our lives, our childhood, the rules we learned, how much food autonomy we had, how we learned to deal with emotion and take care of ourselves. And as in Donna's story, it actually becomes a survival situation. So if you find yourself eating for relief, this happens when the eating system resets to bring it back into balance. It's what happens to reduce the level of emotion that sits at the center of an eating system. It's not self-sabotage. It's not even personal. It's functional and doing what all systems do, and that is striving to find balance. For Donna, every time she settled on a diet, determined a date, set a mind, prepared the food, she actually felt in charge, as though she might actually be in control of this eating. But after a week, the familiar rising of fear would have her eating 1, 2, or more chocolate blocks until it became obvious to her that this diet attempt was over. When fear is your baseline emotion and sugar is the way you treat it, the weight gain will match how much sugar was needed. When Donna reframes chocolate from being a treat, one every so often, to a treatment, something she has to use regularly, it can change how she views her weight, her life, and what she needs for her weight to go down permanently. But when she treats her weight with a diet plan without addressing the underlying root cause of fear, then the diet can only work temporarily, unless her fear is addressed with a parallel treatment. What's interesting, though, is if we view this cycle from a different viewpoint, we could say that when fear is low or non-existent, sugar can lose its purpose. As she had already demonstrated, she can eat in a way that weight can be lost, and if she's able to go low and slow with an eating plan to reduce her intake, then it can happen permanently. But the central point is, for this to work permanently, this diet of whatever type, she needs an additional action plan to reduce her fear directly. Most women I have ever come across are excellent problem solvers, and this is a problem that can be solved, and it can be solved permanently. But to solve it, we need to focus on root cause, not the symptom of that root cause. So let me finish up by recapping the key points from Donna's story, the ones that I really want you to get from this episode. Because these are the key points that help Donna reclaim agency over her eating. So in short, Donna's food story was shaped in a house where meals were inedible and violence was a constant threat. She relied on chocolate for comfort and keeping her level of fear bearable. As a result of that family food culture, her system triggers her relief eating every time her fear level becomes too high or she reduces her chocolate intake to a level that's too low. The weight regain is the visible side effect of needing relief from her high level of fear. So without oversimplifying Donna's eating system, what it has done is that her eating system links fear to sugar that results in weight regain. When fear rises, chocolate follows. When chocolate rises, weight follows. The food story is the origin of this weight regain, and the eating system is the structure that formed from it and keeps producing the same result. Once Donna understood the connection between these factors, she knew that reducing her calorie intake alone can't fix this repeating pattern. My intent with this series of 10 women's stories is to have you think deeply about your own history. And if you, like me, want to eliminate the blaming and shaming of women about weight regain, please help me get these episodes into the ears and hearts of women who need to hear it. Thanks for listening. I'll talk with you next week when you'll hear Leah's story. Take care of yourself in the meantime.